Today's topic is grammar. And if you've got 5 minutes, I've got 5 tips to help you navigate 5 odd grammar rules that you may not know about. Well, I love the English language, but I often wonder how people learn our language when English isn't their first language. We have so many unusual circumstances in our language. We have words that sound the same but are spelled differently and all mean different things. For example, there. They are 3 different words. They are spelled differently. They are completely different in their usage and meaning. But if you were listening to our language, they all sound exactly the same. English has lots of grammar rules. Yes, other languages have them as well, but we have a lot of rules and a lot of rules that you need to know about as a writer before you can break them. Now, I have today 5 tips for 5 odd grammar rules that you may or may not be aware of, and you may or may not be aware that you're breaking them. Or maybe you think there are rules where there aren't rules. So let's get started. Tip number 1, make sure your adjectives are in the right order. What? You say, what? What do you mean adjectives in the right order? What orders do adjectives have? Well, there are rules about this. One of the things I'm pretty sure about is that you probably get this right most of the time, and you just do it naturally if English is your first language. If it's not your first language, that can be more of a problem. But when you learn to speak the language, you generally learn them in the right order. And here it is. Order goes from 1 to 8. Opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, and purpose. Let me give you an example. You wouldn't say Mary has a white, cute little dog, would you? You would naturally say Mary has a cute little white dog. And it sounds perfectly right, and if you go back to the list of order, you'll see that those adjectives are in the correct order. Tip number 2, check your verb accuracy when using compound subjects. Sometimes this is really easy, and sometimes it's a little bit more challenging. If your compound subject is joined by and, that's very simple. It suddenly becomes plural. So you need a plural form of your verb. Here's the example. Susan and David are going to the concert. Of course, if Susan was going alone, you'd say Susan is going to the concert. But when you make it a compound subject, Susan and David, well, that now becomes plural. There are 2 of them, and they are going to the concert. Are going to the concert. Comes a little bit more difficult when the joining word is not and. So what if you don't know which one of them is going to the concert, and you say Susan or David? Do you say Susan or David is going to the concert, or Susan or David are going to the concert? Well, here's the rule. When a compound subject is separated by an, or nor, the verb will agree with the most recent noun. So in this case, it should be Susan or David is going to the concert. Or it could be Susan or her sisters are going to the concert. That's the rule. Tip number 3, use the correct dash for the correct purpose. Now, a while ago, I did a video on using the em dash, and it seems quite popular, so you might consider going back and having a look at that particular video. But in the meantime, I want to differentiate among the 3 types of dashes that we use in the English language, the em dash, the en dash, and the hyphen. And they are not exactly the same in their usage. In fact, they're not the same in their usage at all. And they are differentiated on the page by the size of them. The em dash is the longest, the en dash is medium size, and the hyphen is the shortest of them. Well, how do they differ? Well, here's the rule. So em dashes are used essentially as heightened parentheses or commas. And in fact, you can use them in place of those when you really want to emphasize something. You can also use an em dash at the end of a sentence when you want to separate something that needs to be heightened or needs to be emphasized, or you want to emphasize it for dramatic effect. Here's an example. She asked, more like demanded, to see the boss. En dashes, on the other hand, are used to separate values. For example, I can eat 8 to 10 hot dogs before I get sick. Well, that's not true. I could probably eat 2, but you get the picture. And finally, hyphens are used to create a single idea from 2 separate words. For example, like socioeconomic needs a hyphen. And using hyphens or not using hyphens can also change the meaning of a sentence, for example. Here's an example. We recommend you don't take down any load-bearing walls. Without the hyphen, but you should instead write, we recommend you don't take down any load-bearing walls. You can see that the first example suggests that you don't take down a load, which bears a wall, but what you really mean is a wall that is load-bearing, so you use a hyphen. Tip number 4, make sure you're using a and an correctly. When you were in elementary school, you probably learned that you use an before a word as the indefinite article before a word that begins with a vowel, and you use a, as the indefinite article before a word that begins with a consonant. That's not entirely correct. Here's what the rule really says. A is used before a word that begins with a consonant sound. And an is used before a word that begins with a vowel sound. Look at these examples. A dog, an aneurysm. You wouldn't say a aneurysm, you would say an aneurysm. A phone, but you would say an iPhone. A hat, a house, an honest person. It begins with an H, but it is silent. It starts with a vowel sound, ah. An hour, same thing. But when you're using acronyms, it depends upon what the first letter is. An MRI, a NATO edict. It's the sound, it's not the actual letter that starts the word. And tip number 5 is you can end a sentence with a preposition if you want to. It appears that this was a Latin grammar rule that kind of seeped into English, but it isn't an English grammar rule at all, in spite of what editors might tell you, and in spite of what Grammarly and other AI grammar checkers might tell you. It is not a grammar rule of the English language. And I have a bonus tip for you. You can also start a sentence with a conjunction like and, but, or because. There's nothing grammatically incorrect if you say, the sky is blue, period, and the grass is green. But arguably, it's poor writing, and it's a poor attempt at trying to be dramatic about something. Just because it's bad writing doesn't mean that it's grammatically incorrect. So these are a few of the oddities of English grammar that, when you get them right, it shows you off as a polished professional writer. Happy writing. Talk to you soon. Subscribe to Write, Fix, Repeat, and maybe I can help you improve your writing knowledge and skills. 5 tips at a time.